This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Cherish Companions with Doug Wilber. And Doug and I were talking before we got started today, and all I want to mention to you listeners on my Facebook page and also the one for New Cleveland Radio, I follow a gentleman by the name of Josh Petit. And Josh lives in North Carolina with his mother and father. His mother has Alzheimer's, and they've been documenting her journey. And it's been so enlightening to watch. But if you're just getting in on it, I suggest you go back and see some of the past ones, because mom now is having more issues. And you know what? This is happening all around us. And it's something that we have to start to understand. And kudos to Josh and his father, who love Betty so much.
Yeah.
It is just remarkable. And I don't know if I would have the strength to do what they're doing. So it's worth a watch. And you wanted to talk a little bit about individuals with dementia.
Yeah, I actually kind of want to talk about two things. One is individuals with dementia, and then I'd like to segue at some point in time and talk a little bit about grief, and a very particular type of grief. But it's interesting. First of all, because when people talk about dementia, many times they talk about what they're meaning is Alzheimer's. But not all dementia is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, but it is not the only form of dementia. And I bring that up for a couple reasons. One is because for some reason, recently we've seen a huge number of people that we're caring for that have a particular type of dementia called frontal lobe dementia. And, I don't think there's a cluster of frontal lobe dementia going on, in our area, as much as just kind of the luck of the draw. We've ended up having that. They know we can handle different types of dementia. And so we're being called on, for doing this. But frontal lobe is very different from other types of dementia. And specifically, it's very different from Alzheimer's. So, Alzheimer's seems to be kind of almost more regressive. You lose your memory and you tend to lose more recent memories oftentimes, and earlier memories are retained for a longer period of time. It's not uniform, but that's kind of how it happens. So, whereas the frontal lobe dementia affects like executive function. So, I was recently in with a client doing an intake, and it was interesting because this particular client could not speak. But it appears, as best as we can tell, to have all their memory, and really a full understanding of what was going on, but had the aphasia and not able to say anything, at least during the time I was there. The individual didn't verbalize a single word. So these different dementias will present differently, and this person's case, they were still ambulating on their own, didn't need assistance, could nod their head with a yes or a no. And so, there was a pretty, you could tell that she understood what you were asking. Just could not express it. And I'm pretty sure that's the type of dementia that Bruce Willis had. And remember, they said that
Right.
he was developing aphasia. Well, I think what it eventually ended up being was this type of dementia. Um, we also have had other folks with similar, and where they're still functioning in many ways, and are highly functional in some respects, and having real issues in other respects, not able to articulate feelings or what's going on, and so it can be complicated. But all dementia, the one thing I can tell you is there is this thing that is going on. When you see a behavior, you understand that that behavior is often a means of communication or expression. Even if someone seems to be, acting out, or not violent, but aggressive, it's oftentimes a way of communicating.
Sure.
And so what you have to say is, what are they trying to communicate, and trying to understand that. But one of the things that I've found, and I've said something along these lines before, but that people, if they're in their own environment, they tend to do better. And if you pull them out of that environment, because of all the fact that they're already compromised, at different aspects of, have been significantly compromised, that you pull one other area, which is the familiarity of an environment, and you take that away from them, and it can be very, very jarring for them. So much so that what I oftentimes see is people end up going through the process. They get some care, and they're getting care with us, and then they think, oh, I'll put this person in a facility. And what I've seen happen so often, whether it be frontal lobe, or with Alzheimer's, or other types of dementia, is you'll see this rapid decline that happens when they go into a facility, and it's like the rug was pulled out from underneath them. And it's not because the facility is a bad facility. That's not it. It's because people do better in a familiar environment.
Sure.
It is an anchor. It is stability for them. And they're also do better with people that are familiar, even if sometimes it doesn't seem like they recognize that individual. They still do better when they're with that individual, because there is something deep in them that understands that that's an anchor, that is something that is grounded with the reality that they've known for at least a long time in those situations. And what I have found is that when that gets taken away and someone is placed into a facility, there is that rapid decline that happens. So I know with the first time I ever saw this, it was shocking, because we had a client that we were caring for, a woman that was functioning at like an incredibly high level. I mean, doing really, really well. We had, caregivers in there that were, so that she could be in her home. And she got pulled from her home and got placed into a good facility. This was not like, a shoddy place. It was
Sure.
a very, very well-known facility. And like within 6 months, she was on hospice and had passed away. And I'm thinking, how did this highly functioning woman go from that to passing away? And And it was like, it was jarring to me, because I was thinking, how did that happen?
Sure.
And,
Absolutely.
first of all, it filled me with a sense of mission, like we're doing the right thing. We're doing right by keeping people in the home. That was the first thing that I had the sense of. The second thing is, why? What would go on that would happen? And I think that's when I really started saying, yeah, I guess, that anchor idea, or that foundation of the familiar, being so important for someone who is older. And recently I saw that happen again. And it was again a thing that just saddened me, and so one of the things that I want to really talk about with that is really saying, or trying to say, what can we do to keep someone in that home environment? Because what I think so often happens is the person who is the primary caregiver can't take it.
Sure.
It's not because they're bad, or it's not because there's anything wrong with it, but what is it that is that they're dealing with, that they can't do it? And so often it's because it's disruptive of their own lives. And what I want people to possibly think about is there a way where they can balance that, keep the person in a home setting, in their home setting, and still be able to keep the balance in the life of the primary caregiver. And and I think there oftentimes is, but you have to give something up in the process. And I see kind of the giving up. I'll give a different example to kind of show how you have to give up things when people are needing care. So often I go into people's homes, and they lovely homes, and they've always had their furniture in a certain way, and they've just redone their bathroom, and it's beautiful. And they have always been good at keeping up their homes. And then all of a sudden I come in and I say, you know what, I think it would be wise to have a grab bar in your bathroom. And it wasn't a part of the original design. So it's really hard for someone to say, I'll put that grab bar in,
Right.
because that, they just did this, and it's beautiful, and it's the way they want, or a bar, in a particular place in the house. Now, understand that, if you put something like a grab bar in a specific place, it can be repaired, it can be patched, you can take that away eventually. So it's not, it's not necessarily permanent. In the bathroom, you can design it so it's still pretty and goes with
Exactly.
the design. So, but it's hard to lay that down, because we have things the way we sort of want them in our lives, whether it be the way the house is or the way we handle our day. And we have to say, you know what, that's not as important as this individual. And how can I not disrupt things that are important, to me as, say, a primary caregiver, keep my sanity, but understand that I'm going to have to give some things up. And so there really is that thing of like dying a little bit to certain things in your life, to and it's not necessarily big things, it's the little things
Right.
that you have to do, where you kind of say, that's not as important as this person that I love. So I'm willing to put a hole in the wall. I'm willing to do some of these things in order for it to be, for that person to be safe. And the other thing might be, the intrusion in my life of having a caregiver. And let's face it, having someone else in your house when you're used to, quiet, or you're used to whatever, is a compromise. But here's the other side of it, and that is, if you could see what I've seen, you'll see that it's worth it. You know, I've not, if someone has done care and they've done it in the right way, I don't see a lot of regrets afterwards.
Right.
I don't see people say, gosh, I really wish I hadn't taken care of my mom. I really wish that, I hadn't done, that, put up the safety features that I did, or, that's not it. If anything, people will sometimes say, I really wish I hadn't put my mom into a facility, or,
Exactly.
and because I don't believe she got the care that I could have provided, or could have overseen, is probably the better way of phrasing it, because, no one should probably be doing all the care themselves, but overseeing and seeing that the care is done the way that you want it to do is is this is something that I think people can do and be proud of afterwards. Now, I never want to guilt anyone, because there are times where you absolutely, there are reasons why you have to place someone in a facility, and it is the right decision. And only the family themselves can make that decision, and I'm not going to second guess someone's decision in doing that.
Sure.
But I will say that people do better at home. And I can say that, all but in the rarest exceptions, that people will probably do better in a home setting, as long as you can build a plan of care for them that fits that. These are musings, these are thoughts. These are thoughts because, I've experienced what I was talking about enough times that I see that it's a pattern, and feel like, if someone's wavering, realize that maybe this is the good, that you can make those compromises, you can do those things, and you can make it work without losing your mind. you know um and um and especially those with dementia, because of the anchor that the home and the individuals can provide to that person. So, the other thing is, um and again, I think this brings up, what I was saying before, um, because I just experienced this with someone, that we've helped not too long ago, um, one thing that people don't always think about is caregivers who've been with someone, whether it be for months or for years, um, also grieve after someone has passed. And I noticed this in this particular case, that the person, was experiencing a lot of grief, because they had become very close to the individual. And I find that our caregivers do become close. So, the other part of this story, um, or really the series of stories, is to understand that caregivers grieve too. And go ahead.
Well, it's quite interesting. I didn't even think of this until we started talking today.
Yeah.
My mother had 4 different caregivers. Occasionally there was a 5th or whatever. But the ones that came through the facility, not from outside, they were nurturing, loving individuals.
Mhm.
And prior to my mother passing away, all 4 of them came to my brother and I and said, please don't forget us. And
Mm.
it was like, what are you asking for? An inheritance? I mean, the way they said it, it was weird. And I finally had the nerve to say, what do you mean forget you? They said, we've known your mother the whole time she lived here. Well, we've been taking care of her for 2 months. She is
Mhm.
not just your mother. She is our friend. She is
Mhm.
Dorothy. And I looked at them and thought, well, that's nice to say, but at the funeral, these women, I mean, pure tears.
Oh, yeah.
And I was cried out at that point, and I'm looking at them and almost envious of them.
Mhm.
But I've stayed in touch with all of them. It's going on 7 years, because they were a huge part. And when it was suggested that we keep her at home, one of the things the doctor said was, she may not be able to see, even though she doesn't know that, but she will smell her house.
Mm.
And if you cook her something that is native to her, she'll be able to enjoy it more
Yeah.
because she will sense where she is.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, and I think that's one of the other kind of hidden things about why being at home is important is because people that are there do develop those attachments that are not superficial, they're deep. And just talking now, actually, I just thought about this as being maybe that other X factor with this, which is that the people are very loyal and dedicated to the people that they're caring for, and you don't get that quite as much in a facility. It's not that you don't get it in a facility, because I know caregivers that have gotten close to individuals, but not all individuals who are doing care, and not all individuals who are receiving care get close to all people
Right.
that are there. Whereas I would say that pretty much, um, except for the rarest of circumstances, all of our caregivers do get close to the people that they care for. And even difficult clients, the caregivers get to know them well, and get close to them, because they understand them. You have to, when you spend the amount of time that you
Right.
do, and they develop a bond, and so, but that comes with a cost. So, as I was talking to someone recently who had lost someone, they said, as I was talking to them, they said, I don't know that I can do this. And, like, take on another person, because they were hurting,
Right.
and I said, that's one of the things where, in home care, you open your heart. And because of that, you get close to someone. And when you get close to someone, you know that you're going to to hurt when they're gone.
Absolutely.
But and that's the price of the privilege of getting close to someone. And there is a price, and there is a privilege. And so by doing it, you've gotten to know and get close to someone that is dear and wonderful and has impacted your life. But when they're gone, you grieve. And that's what that person was experiencing. And, the and that's one of the gifts that someone is giving by opening their heart, is and being willing to get close. Is eventually, there comes a point where you're going to have to grieve. And it was funny because she said, yeah, she understood, what that it's worth it. Can you imagine, really, can you imagine your life without that, having met that person? And if you can
Absolutely.
say, no, I can't imagine, then you say, yeah, it's a price that's worth paying. But you still are experiencing the grief at the time, and you have to go through it. And we can't forget our caregivers that, have gone through that.
Absolutely.
And they need the support. I had a couple caregivers over the years that have said, I need to take some time off, and they'll even take like a month off before they're able to come back, and do it. And I'm willing to give them that time off, because if that's what it takes, to to kind of process things, and to get back and be able to open your heart again, then we're willing to give them that time, for the grief, and for being able to process things,
And we also have to understand that we all grieve differently. There will
Right.
be some that will just jump back right into things because that's how they get through their
They
grief.
go, yeah,
And there are others, like you said, that need the time off. And others who are going to maybe say, you know what, I need to step away from this profession for right now because, you know, I don't want to be hurt like this again. But then if that's who you are, if you're that nurturer, you'll be back. And
right.
so to all your caregivers and the other caregivers out there, um, take the time that you need and process it. And there are places where you can communicate about how you're feeling as well.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things too, is we do have a kind of an open door. So if someone's going through something, we want to help them. We want them, to be able to process things, to think through, to understand, and just so often, not only will it bring up a memory of the individual, but it'll bring up other loved ones that you've had, and if you had to go through it, with that other person before, and it's bringing up even more memories,
Absolutely.
and that's a part of life. I think, one of the things about something like that is, I always go to a funeral and I walk away usually saying, you know, um, you know, I want to be a better man. You know, After walking away, I always, am doing, thinking about how, I can do what I do as a human much better than what I do. And so I think that, I think when we go through the process of grieving for someone, if we handle it right, I think in the end, it brings us to, thoughts of the eternal, of God, of you know of good and evil, of all sorts of things that ultimately are good things, not bad things. So,
Absolutely.
grief is not a bad thing. Grief is a hard thing, but it's not a bad thing. Yeah, and or it doesn't have to be a bad thing. So, anyway, the musings and thoughts sometimes, events of what I've gone through make me, want to go down a certain path with this. And since it's my podcast, I can do it.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that. But I think sometimes talking about the hard subjects are
Mhm.
very, very important. Um, you know, before my mother got sick, I knew that I was on her living will. I knew my brother was supposed to take care of her financials. We knew it, but we didn't talk about it. And then when she got sick, we talked about it because we knew that she wasn't going to live much longer. And
Yeah.
um, I'm sorry that we waited till that time because I think we could have been stronger before. But communication is important and grief is real. And we shouldn't doubt somebody's grief. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
well,
well, I appreciate the time to be able to, share a perspective. And I hope that, through this, maybe one person may be able to say, yeah, acknowledge the grief and that's good and normal, or even a family for a caregiver that's been important to them to understand, to reach out to them, even, to that they're maybe a part of the whole grieving process. And then, the idea that home is good. And if you have the opportunity to keep someone home and the capacity, whether it be your own capacity or, financial, whatever, that you want to regret it, there is a good part to that. So, but I appreciate the time.
sure. And we will talk to you again next month.
All right.
Have a
Take
great day. Bye bye
care.
now.
Bye-bye.